It's been a little while, so let's take a quick look through our inventory and quest log. There are a few things I want to buy before continuing. Since we're on a timer until the assault on the vendor's heart, our priority is anything that helps us get more done each day and minimize resting. First, delay poison scrolls. We're going to be running into more dredges, so having a couple of these is useful. Next, a lesser extent metamagic rod. This lets us double the duration of 3 buffs per day, which is excellent for reducing the number of rests we need. From Gawks, the main thing we're after is a few restoration potions. Fatigue can come from world map travel or from certain failed athletics checks. And without these potions, we'd be forced to rest in such a case. I also pick up some bless weapon and invisibility potions. The invisibility potions are mainly a safety net in case something goes wrong and I would otherwise have to reload. The bless weapon potions are inexpensive and I want them later anyway. They're useful throughout the game. Finally, I decide to store all my cooking ingredients in the chest for now. We won't be cooking during our next few rests, so there's no reason to carry the extra weight around. It's time to head to the market square. We arrive without incident.
No challenge at all.
A tiefling approaches and tells us about a secret passage. We'll learn the details later from another group of tieflings elsewhere on this map. Naturally, we extort him for money and then kill him for a few extra gold coins. Every little bit helps. Before moving on, we cast Longstrider at 1 hour per level. It will last until we either rest or leave the market square. For the upcoming encounter, I use a delay poison scroll to protect against Stinking Cloud, and use Dark Veil for some protection from archers. I save the rest of my buffs for later. We won't be doing most of the fighting ourselves here. My plan here, admittedly somewhat ambitious, is to get the Marauders and the Demon and Cultists to fight each other. It feels like exactly the sort of thing a trickster would do. The safer approach would have been to either sneak past or clear only the first encounter, then lure the remaining groups one by one toward the Paladin Crusader by the tower. When I did a test run on another character, the Crusaders here kept the cultists occupied long enough for me to slip past them. After that, they moved on to engage the Marauders further down. As you can see, that is not what happened this time. Time to improvise. Normally, the Marauder archers end up positioned a bit further back as well. Hopefully, the two groups will still end up engaging each other from here. For now, we retreat into a corner to break combat and patch ourselves up.
Now you see me, now you don't.
It looks like they're busy killing each other, so let's pay Kaylessa a visit in the meantime. There's also a hidden cache in the wall here, so I switch animal focus to Falcon for the perception bonus. The extra perception also helps with one of the skill checks during Kaylessa's dialogue. We get a respectable chunk of quest experience simply for speaking to her. On the way back, we run into what's left of the Marauders. It seems they won their fight against the cultists. We employ a bit more cheesy turn-based real-time toggling to kite them around and finish them off. But with that done, it's time to cross to the other side via the debris bridge. There are still some Marauders on this side, as well as Ember, but we'll deal with those later. Ember in particular is someone we do not want to be forced into recruiting until much later. On the other side, we run into some vermin. The easiest way I found to deal with them is simply to run past them and lure them towards the Crusaders fighting another group of vermin in the nearby field by the tower. Taking an attack opportunity on the way through is perfectly acceptable. The damage is minor and we have delay poison on. The Crusaders make short work of the vermin. Notice the one with the fancy shield? That's a paladin, and he's considerably stronger than the others. We'll be making good use of him later. As usual, we cast guidance before an upcoming skill check. I have already covered Feud of the Faithful in a deep dive video, and part 2 even features footage from this very playthrough. As a result, there's quite a bit of overlap, so I won't be going into the quest details again here. Here we have the aforementioned skill check. We find out his energy has been drained by a Nabasu. Just beyond Hulrun is an Eon book event. Completing it unlocks the Eon path and grants the purple stone knife. The knife is required for story progression. I avoid the fight in the center of the market square for now and head towards the trapped Tieflings. They will tell us about that secret passage that other Tiefling mentioned earlier. It's part of the Burning City quest. Before the upcoming athletics check, I switch my animal focus aspect to monkey. We fail the check anyway. Luckily, it's not enough to make us fatigue just yet. We also deliberately choose not to recruit the Tieflings for a common cause. Our character is proficient in trickery, and having the Tieflings disarm the traps in the Grey Garrison instead of us would ultimately cost us experience. The experience from learning about the secret passage from them is enough to push us to level 6. Favorite terrain urban will become later on when we get camouflage. A bark skin is mostly for when we return to playing with the full party. In practical terms, level 6 only gives us a +1 base attack bonus right now. We continue towards Ramien to progress the Feud of the Faithful questline. Along the way, we also learned the location of the Arendae party house, which we'll need to visit shortly. A small gameplay note. Items with dockable passive effects deactivate when moved to a different belt slot, so be careful when reorganizing them. We proceed towards the peaceful resolution of Feud of the Faithful. After speaking with Ramien, Ilkes appears. Accepting his request for help starts the Starward Gaze quest. Alternatively, you can kill him here and report back to Hulrun. This will still complete Starward Gaze in the quest log and award the associated experience, but you miss out on the Azata mythic path, among other consequences. At this point, we decide to clear the fight in the center of the market square. The funny thing is that the only real difference between now and earlier is a single point of base attack bonus. Mostly, I avoided it out of habit. In older runs, I would tackle this encounter with my party or solo while fully buffed. That meant completing the Feud of the Faithful portion first, both to avoid wasting buff duration and hopefully gaining a useful level beforehand. Now, however, I'm not buffing at all, since I intend to let the Crusader Paladin handle all the work for me. In general, once this fight is finished, it will make sense to proceed to Hulrun. Convincing him grants a respectable amount of non-combat experience, and you generally want to prioritize non-combat experience for an easier playthrough. For this run though, it does not really matter. Reaching level 7 mid-encounters does not change much, since the main benefits only become available after resting. the only benefits, and we will be returning to Hulrun before resting regardless. So instead we continue luring enemies towards our friends near the tower. And next up are the Abrikandilu. Their Cold Sphere ability can be quite dangerous in a conventional party, especially if your tank is an animal companion. Those tend not to have the best will saves. For us, however, it is of little concern. At the cultist encounter near the Desna temple, there's an evoker. As a ranged enemy, he is the only real threat to us here, so we focus him down first. The melee cultists are easily dealt with. We guide them towards the Crusaders as a precaution, but end up killing them well before we reach them. Now we get to one of the reasons I picked Fairy Fire as one of my level 1 spells. The music turning ominous here is not accidental. There's a hidden Babau waiting to ambush us. If we walked up to these packs without knowing he was there, he could easily one-shot our character with a sneak attack. Now that we revealed him, however, we can simply lure him over to our Crusader paladin friend. Normally, the two are fairly evenly matched. Actually, the Crusader usually comes out on top. Things go a little differently this time. I panic slightly and switch to turn-based mode to get an attack in against Babau's flat-footed armor class. Unfortunately, this also leaves the Crusader flat-footed against the Babau's next attack. Had I not done that, it was entirely possible for the next few attacks to miss, and for him to survive the encounter. Fortunately, we have plenty of room to guide the Babau ourselves. Exploiting a bit of real-time to turn-based toggling helps speed things up. I even tried to finish him off with a Divine Zap for style points. It takes 2 casts, a little awkward. As a consolation prize, we get a Today Poison Scroll from one of the Flame Blades the Crusader killed earlier, which is quite lucky. The scroll drop is randomly selected from a select pool, and there is his +2 heavy mithril shield. We'll pick it up later. I don't want the extra weight right now. One downside of the Crusader dying early is that we'll have to deal with the annoying rat swarms ourselves. Fortunately, rat swarms have what I can only describe as negative range. Their hitbox is actually larger than their attack range. As a result, it's entirely possible to kite him in real time using nothing more than a non-reach melee weapon. Faction, the leader of the Baphomet cultist at the Tower of Estroth, drops a fire mace that is particularly useful for a melee character here, since rat swarms take full damage from both fire and bludgeoning. Now, if a melee character can kite them, then it's child's play for us. Unfortunately, they take only half piercing and no precision damage. As while kiting them is incredibly easy, actually killing them is going to take a while. Finally. West of the Desna temple, there is a hidden booze stash. I assume it belongs to the Desna adepts, and that they partook of it quite heavily when they come up with their brilliant plan that landed both them and their master in so much trouble with Hulrun. Bunch of twats. Although perhaps my trickster character feels a certain kinship with them. The next encounter is fairly dangerous with the large number of ranged enemies. I buff up beforehand, making use of my Extend Rod on my minute per level combat buffs. That should give me enough duration to clear enough encounters to reach level 7 before needing to rest. I also drink a Constitution potion and equip an Invisibility potion in my belt as an emergency escape option. I briefly consider using Blur, but much of the incoming range damage here comes from Magic Missile and Inflict Wounds, neither of which cares about concealment. liberal use of hit-and-run tactics, disengaging whenever necessary to heal up. One downside of doing so is that we lose sight of our enemies. As a result, we end up running straight into an inflict wounds cast from the pursuing Wormlet. We could have waited for it to return to its original position, but that's rather tedious. Once brought low enough, the Wormlets will use abandoned flesh to heal themselves. That actually creates a safe opening as they spend their action on it and cannot immediately threaten us again. A useful thing to know about Wormlets is that they switch from their powerful mass inflict wounds ability to relatively weak melee attacks once you close into melee range. Of course, that's not an option for this character. When the ghouls climb out of the fissure after combat has already started, they do not enter the battle flat-footed on their first turn. This is generally true for any enemies that joins an encounter mid-combat. I focus down the flat-footed ghoul first, and then kite the others in real time.
No challenge at all. This is my time to shine.
Continuing along the fissure, we run into Coral, and soon after the rest of Seelah's friends arrive with the beer cart. We're progressing that questline. Down the slope, we get a cutscene with a Nabasu, which I assume is one of the brutes Hulrun fought earlier. This optional mini-boss can be challenged when you return to the market square after completing a stay of execution. For now, though, all we have to deal with are the ghoul-turned crusaders. The zombies in the graveyard are easy enough. The most dangerous enemy here is the Shadow. They are incorporeal. Had he had a regular crossbow instead of Finian, we would do no damage to them. We do make a bit of a mistake, however. I walk straight into the middle of the zombies. Fortunately, we managed to get out by abusing a combination of turn-based and real-time movement. There's a reason there are so many zombies around here. Further ahead, there's a necromancer raising them. If we want to fight the Nabasu after the defender's hard battle, we need to kill the necromancer before the assault on the defender's heart occurs. We'll be waiting until level 8 before attempting that, though. We wait for all 3 shadows to spawn before disengaging. Because they enter the encounter after combat has already begun, they are not flat-footed. However, when we re-engage, they will be. Before heading back into the fight, we make a quick detour through the graveyard. There's a +1 throwing axe here. From what I gather, throwing axes are quite a popular weapon choice. I do not remember whether there's also a regular throwing axe available somewhere around here or back in the prologue. But if you are planning a two-weapon fighting throwing axe build, you could certainly use this one alongside Finian from this point onward. That said, given the feat investment required, I would probably stick with the composite longbows for quite a while before transitioning where I'm playing such a build. As you can see, the shadows start the encounter flat-footed this time. One slightly unfortunate side effect is that the zombies have lost whatever status effect was slowing them down. We then start clearing the path back towards the debris bridge near the market square entrance. First, some are ghouls, then vermin, and finally a few weak demons. Since we are in the vicinity, I also bait out the Necromancer's Haste, so we won't have to deal with it next time. We briefly engage the encounter and then immediately retreat, switching between turn-based and real-time mode to cover more distance. After that, we rescued the next-door theater troupe from beneath the rubble. Convincing Hulrun is worth more than 3,000 experience, which means we can go pick up level 7 whenever we want. Given that our buffs are about to expire anyway, this seems like the perfect moment to stop fighting and do exactly that. But before doing that, however, I decide to spend my last available level 2 spell slot on Sense Vitals and see if I can one-shot Necromancer. We take 2 shots at them. I consider trying again, but we've moved out of range and I don't want to push my luck. The next spell the Necromancer will cast is Blindness. After that, the encounter becomes extremely dangerous, as Bone Shatter can easily one-shot this character. So we disengage. Back at Hulrun, we collect our 3,000 experience reward and reach level 7. For our hour feat, we take a Meta Magic feat, a prerequisite for War Master later on. We also gain a Teamwork feat from Forester. Outfang does absolutely nothing for us right now, but it will be strong with a party later. Next, we pick up Bull Strength. That too is mainly to help our party in the future. In fact, the only thing we really gain from level 7 that is useful in the near future is a few extra spell uses. A good thing we are about to rest and get those. We always try to rest near allies in case of an ambush. In fact, we deliberately don't camouflage our camp here in the hopes of triggering one, as it would mean extra experience. One important thing not to forget once back at Defender's Hearth is to speak to the priest. Otherwise, we'll continue to accumulate corruption even when resting there. With that done, we head back towards Defender's Hearth. The reason for this is that we are about to trigger the Nenio Encounter, and we like to drop her off at Defender's Hearth immediately afterwards. Once inside the encounter area, there is some hidden loot off to the right, so we switch our aspect to Falcon once again. One cannot return here after leaving, so we'd best find it now. I do not go particularly heavy on buffs for this fight. We do not need much offensive power to deal with these enemies. More important is the concealment from ranged attacks provided by Dark Veil. I also do not consider spending potions or bark skin to increase my armor class worthwhile. My armor class is low enough that the few extra points will not make much of a difference. A Dark Veil, on the other hand, provides a 50% miss chance before the attack roll is even made. We then walk into the somewhat comical exchange between Nenio and the Gothists. Having failed to answer her Quizz questions, they decide violence is the appropriate response. Now, just a moment ago, I said I did not need additional offensive power, but right here I fall slightly short of one-shotting my opening target. So perhaps a Sense Vitals or even an Enlarged Person potion would have been no good idea after all. Yes, an Enlarged Person costs us 2 points of attack bonus, but hitting these enemies is not the issue. In fact, using Sense Vitals instead of Cat's Grace for the same spell slot investment is also a reasonable argument. Notice that the Barbarian takes no sneak attack damage. He has Uncanny Dodge, which means he is not flat-footed at the start of combat. This can still be bypassed by other means which we currently do not possess. With the fight over, we get our own quiz. You do not actually need to pass the checks here, Simply selecting the correct answer awards the experience point.
You're not. That's correct. It seems to me that I owe you an and I must admit that you passed the test with flying colors. This does. I apologize. Do you wish truth
To recruit Nenio at our main character's experience total, we need to toggle the shared experience setting in the menu. Unfortunately, my game decides this is the perfect moment to bug out. My menu hotkey stops working, and because we are stuck inside the dialogue, I cannot click the menu button manually either. So regrettably, it's time for an Alt F4 and a redo of the encounter.
There's something over there.
Thankfully, the menu is working again after reloading. The second attempt starts less smoothly. We lose initiative and immediately get hit twice. I may have underestimated the damage output. If the sharpshooter had rolled a bit better, there is a realistic chance I would have died before getting the chance to reload. I believe he could have done up to 20 damage on a one crit, crossbows being 1d10. I do not change any of my buffs, but this time the damage rolls cooperate and the fight goes very smoothly. We go through the quiz again. Arendae, apparently also known as the Last Aslanti. So will have to explain to me why the game's Iron Man mode is called Last Aslanti. I've never quite understood the connection. This time the menu behaves itself and we successfully recruit Nenio. We escort Nenio to Defender's Hearth. Once there, we salve some loot. Inside the tavern, we stumble upon a rather merry scene. Seelah's friends have apparently shared their beer barrel with the rest of the tavern. Or at least that's what the dialogue claims. From what I can see, it looks like they're the only ones doing any drinking. They tell us of Elend's missing wedding ring, and we can agree to help, starting a new quest that continues in Act 2. While we're selling more loot, I take a look through a book I picked up in the market square. The powerless protagonist gets tormented by a demon. Not exactly the sort of thing I would expect to be popular reading material among the citizens of Canavris. It's not an uplifting crusader tale. We also speak with Thorn, progressing the Outcast quest. Before leaving, we review our quest log. Our immediate priorities are the Blackwind Library and continuing both the Starward Gaze and Feud of the Fatal questlines. To do that, we'll need to visit the Arendae party house. I also forgot to speak with Nenio in the tavern. That will have to wait until the next time we return to Defender's Hearth, as I either didn't realize or didn't care. Since we switched away from camp camouflage while camping, we need to remember to switch back before traveling. Otherwise, the game will not use our stealth skill when determining whether a random encounter becomes an ambush. And it pays off. We get to start the encounter on our own terms. At the party house, I accidentally engaged the dredges before buffing. It doesn't really matter. They are weak enough to handle without preparation. We do, however, want to buff for the main fight. This time we use Sense Vitals. My hope is to one-shot the Shearer with it. Normally I would always target the Camion Wizard first and leave the Shearer, with its high armor class, until last. Once the other enemies are gone, the Shur is easy enough to guide around the table. However, because Sense Vitals has such a short duration, I want to get value out of it before it expires. Darren does not exactly cover himself in glory here. To be fair, that's partly my fault for dragging the Shur over to him. By this point, it's becoming increasingly obvious that targeting the Shur first was a mistake. In fact, Aranka has contributed the most to the fight so far. We've been about as useful as a dead courtesan. Still, we eventually get the result we're looking for. Sense Vitals adds another 66 damage, and the Shur goes down in one shot. Unfortunately, while I was busy decorating the room with bolts, the other demons slaughtered all of Darren's guests. Once the fight is over, we speak with Aranka to progress the Starward Gaze quest. We also deliberately avoid interacting with Darren. We'll be delaying his recruitment until the last possible moment. There are a couple skill checks inside the manor as well. I'd better pass the one about the queen, otherwise it would imply that my character either literally fell from heaven or hit their head very hard on the way down the fissure. Upon arriving at the Blackwing Library, we find quite a bit of valuable loot. Several of the books here also grant permanent bonuses to the main character, making them well worth picking up. This is also where Ulbrig first comes back to life. He will later appear at Defender's Hearth, where he can be recruited. Much like Darren, however, we will be delaying that for as long as possible. In many respects, Golarion feels more girly modern than medieval. Printed books seem to be everywhere, and literacy seems common enough. Which makes me wonder, what does a printing press even look like in this setting? Is it a mechanical invention, or is mass production of books handled through magic instead? Yet another horror novel? At least in this one, the protagonists eventually win. Fortunately, the Wormlegs we fought earlier did not have any mind-affecting abilities. Now we get to the Trickster Unlock then. One of the options allows us to convince Caleb to kill his fellow cultists. An absolutely hilarious prank. More loot. This book is actually quite amusing. And here we find Nurah's book about her former master. One of the fun things about replaying a game is spotting all these references to characters who will only appear later in the story. Our Arcana skill is fairly high, thanks to skill focus, and though I haven't actually checked the exact value at this set now. This world check, however, is a bit too high for us. In fact, we rolled a natural 20 and still failed. If I were playing perfectly, I would have checked my skill modifiers beforehand and simply left it alone for now. I could always come back later with another character or return at a higher level and claim the experience then. Next we rescue the Storyteller and the Knights of the Flaming Lance. The sister Nyammir they mention here is someone we'll meet later in Act 3. We can also recruit these knights for the assault on the Grey Garrison. They'll provide us a 90-minute haste buff at the start of the dungeon. Let's take a look at the book bonuses we picked up here. +1 armor class against dragons. Very useful. A +1 bonus on saving throws against swarms. This one is actually somewhat useful, though ideally we'd already have some form of immunity to whatever status effect they inflict. +1 sealed armor class against demons. Not especially relevant for our character, but generally a solid bonus. Shield is a personal spell, so sealed armor class is not something that's readily available to most characters. And then there's this one, which is extremely character-specific and effectively useless for most builds. It's a shame our companions are all illiterate. We teleport back to Defender's Hearth with the Storyteller and sort through the loot we picked up, either selling it or storing it in our chest. One thing that's very important here is that we do not talk to the Storyteller. Doing so would cause Ulbrig to appear at the tavern the next time we visit, and we'd like to delay his recruitment for as long as possible. Back at the market square, we head towards the location of that initial battle between the Crusaders and demons. One of the character Crusaders there was actually Thall Wallflower, the Desna adept. He's still standing there. Interacting with him causes Hulrun to appear, so we buff up beforehand. This time we buff with aspect of the Falcon over Longstrider. We won't need the extra movement speed for the upcoming fight. It is possible to resolve this encounter peacefully, but killing Hulrun provides significantly more experience points, and we want to reach level 8 as quickly as possible. I know what I'd rather have with me in the Grey Garrison. That's had both from a role-playing perspective and for the purposes of this build, siding with the adepts makes more sense. As for Hulrun himself, he's actually a very tough opponent. Realistically, he could probably have cleared most of the market square on his own instead of standing around near the fissure. He is, however, exhausted and suffering from several negative levels. The former is also part of why he's so slow, even compared to the other Inquisitors. I misclick here and very nearly end the run. One downside of playing with the high turn-based animation speed. And now only Hulrun remains. God, he's slow. Time to retire, old man. The Longsword of Righteousness deals an extra 1d3 points of magic damage to chaotic creatures. We do need to remember to go back and speak with Thall before proceeding. With that done, we can go to the Temple of Desna and finish Starward Gaze. Some more Nurah here. We'll meet Sire and the ever-bright Crusaders in Dresden. We just encountered the Knights of the Flaming Lance, and we'll meet the Order of the Sunrise alongside Regil in Act 2. Hulrun, of course, we just killed, and we're already familiar with Erebeth and the Eagle Watch. Singing along here unlocks the Azata Mythic Path. It also enables the option to recruit Rusalai early near the end of Act 2. And with that, Starward Gaze is complete. Next, we talk to Ramien to finish Feud of the Faithful. It's very important to choose dialogue option 2 rather than option 1 here. Both complete a quest, but option 1 awards only 414 solo experience points. That's considerably less than what we get now. We also recruit the Desnans for the Grey Garrison Assault, as there's little reason not to. And with that, we reach level 8. It's a huge level for us, as we finally unlock Camouflage. The bonus combat feat is not particularly relevant right now. We take weapon finesse, but that's mainly for later, when we'll be making our crossbow agile through Trickster's Arcana too. For our spells, we mostly pick up general purpose support buffs that will provide value once we're back to playing with the party. As for camouflage, it's time to start abusing it. One thing to be wary of is that if we are within an enemy's perception range, we can still be detected. The in-combat stealth provided by camouflage does not grant any bonus to stealth checks. Getting detected is not much of an issue here, since we have plenty of room to kite, which we can do thanks to baiting out Haste earlier. However, it is something to be very careful about in more confined areas, where creating distance is not so easy. Now, seems like a good time for a bit of a digression. There's a bit of a rant concerning my build and camouflage I'd been meaning to get off my chest. Camouflage is terrible when compared to Witch of the Whale's Shrouded Step. Camouflage is a move action, Shrouded Step is a swift action. Camouflage grants ordinary stealth, Shrouded Step grants invisibility, which effectively means a plus 20 bonus to stealth. That Cutthroat would never have spotted us there if we had that on. Camouflage is terrain limited, Shrouded Step is not. In fact, this limitation is the main reason we'll stop choosing camouflage after Act 1. Worst of all, Shrouded Step is available as early as level 2. However, if you compare camouflage to other similar abilities, such as Hide in Plain Sight or Trickster's Sneak 1, it actually seems fairly well balanced. Hide in Plain Sight removes the terrain restriction, but arrives 5 levels later. Trickster's Sneak 1 grants invisibility, but it is a mythic class ability. In other words, camouflage is fairly balanced. It is Shrouded Step that is dramatically overtuned. Furthermore, since we're making a Forester build, not a Shrouded Step build, it doesn't really matter how powerful Shrouded Step is. I'm playing Forester, and it makes sense to take advantage of one of the subclasses' unique abilities, even if only temporary. Now, is Forester worth taking purely for the camouflage from a power gaming perspective? No, absolutely not. It's a pretty niche and overall weak ability. Yet, it's pretty much what I did. And to be completely honest, aside from a strong first couple levels, the subclass does not have many other compelling selling points either. Terrain expertise might have some value in one of the DLC campaigns with more consistent terrain times. I would have to check. In the main campaign, however, pretty useless. Part of the reason I chose Forester was that camouflage let me experience stealth-based gameplay without committing an entire playthrough to it, because it's not powerful enough to do that. And once we reach Act 2, or even before that, and I've had my fill of this cheese, we'll transition into a backline Vital Strike build. At that point, it would arguably rather be a regular composite bow archer build. In exchange, however, we have had an easy early game and enter the mid game at a higher level. And there are definitely still some nice advantages to having a move action available, which we will be exploring. Alright, enough of that. Let's refocus on what's happening on screen. We are approaching one of the tougher encounters in the market square. The conjurer in the back starts by turning invisible, casting Haste, and then summoning wolves and monitor lizards. The wolves are not particularly threatening for most characters, but for us it's a different story. If we are detected, they can run us down even without haste. Unfortunately, I remain a little too close to the Cambion. I clearly need the better feel for the detection range before attempting encounters in tighter spaces. One positive is that the Conjurer doesn't appear to have cast Haste on anyone. I'm not entirely sure what the rare conditions are, but I'll take it. In the end, we handled this fight in a more conventional way, relying on the Crusaders to tank for us. They do not respawn though, so we are fortunate that our shots connect. Had we missed too much, they might have not have survived long enough to help with the summons. The summons themselves are dangerous to us, but fairly weak overall, making the Crusaders quite useful. As for the Conjurer, he's not much of a combatant once isolated. We have no problem engaging him directly. Further on, we come across the corpses of several mongrels, apparently killed either by demons or by an overzealous Hulrun. Alan will be quite sad when I tell him. Nearby are a number of decapitated bodies as well. I'll need to keep a close eye on my inventory, and my carrying capacity is fairly limited. I'm not going inside this house yet. For now, we're mainly collecting loot and picking up any remaining skill check experience points before heading back to Defender's Hearth for a rest. I do accidentally over-encumber myself, which immediately causes fatigue. I really wish that only triggered once you closed the inventory screen. Back at Defender's Hearth, we do some housekeeping, talk to a few people, copy spells into Nenio's spellbook, and sell off some loot. I also level up Nenio, as she can scribe scrolls while we rest. Greater spell penetration is generic enough that it's likely useful regardless of what build we eventually take her into. Unless we decide to do something unusual like a Death's Consonant build. We will not actually be using her until Strike from the Sky. We have her scribe a Sense Vitals scroll. It will be at caster level 6, giving it the same amount of sneak attack damage as our own version. It's a short duration spell and we have limited spell slots, so it'll be all good use. And that's it for now. Next up we'll probably do Gurum's family secrets, which means I really should have leveled Camellia and prepared her spells before the rest. Oops. It should be fine regardless.